Part 1. Hook. I still remember the way she sounded on the phone. "Grandpa, you're coming, right?" Her voice was soft, hopeful, the kind of hope only children have. The kind that believes you will always show up. "Of course I am, Lily," I told her. I wouldn't miss it for anything in this world. It was her first big school award ceremony. Top student of the year. And she didn't invite her father first. She didn't invite her mother first. She invited me. I ironed my only good shirt that morning. The navy one your grandmother bought me years ago. The cuffs were a little worn now, but I kept it clean. I even polished my shoes, though one sole was starting to peel. At my age, you don't get many important days left. This was one of them. I left early, almost an hour ahead of time. I wanted to sit in the front row, just like she asked. "Grandpa," she had whispered the night before, "when they call my name, I'm going to look for you first." I smiled the whole drive. I kept imagining her little face searching the crowd, and me waving back. But when I reached the school auditorium, everything changed. Parents were already gathering outside, expensive cars, polished shoes, dresses that probably cost more than my monthly pension. I walked slowly toward the entrance, holding the small bouquet of flowers I bought for her from a roadside stand. $5. I had skipped lunch to afford them. At the door stood a young usher with a clipboard. "Good afternoon," I said politely. "I'm here for Lily Carter's ceremony." He looked at his list. Then he looked at me. Then back at the list. And his expression shifted. "Sorry," he said flatly. "Family seating is full." I blinked. "I am family." He shook his head. "Immediate family only. Parents are already inside." For a moment, I thought I misheard him. "I'm her grandfather," I said gently. "She asked me to come." He didn't even check again. "I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to stand outside or watch from the hallway screen." Outside. The word hit harder than I expected. Inside that auditorium, my granddaughter was about to receive the biggest award of her life, and I wasn't allowed to sit with the family. Through the doors I could hear applause starting. My hands tightened around the flowers. For the first time in years, I felt small. Not poor, not old, just unwanted. And I had no idea yet that, in a few minutes, that little girl would stop the entire ceremony, because she couldn't find me. Before Part 2 starts, if this story touches your heart, make sure you subscribe and stay with me till the end, because what Lily did next, no one in that auditorium will ever forget. Part 2. I didn't argue with the usher. At my age, you learn something important. Humiliation is always louder when you try to fight it. So I simply nodded, stepped aside, and moved toward the hallway screen he had pointed at. It was a small television mounted high on the wall. A few late parents and two bored teenagers stood nearby, barely paying attention. I stood behind them, holding the bouquet carefully so the flowers wouldn't bend. From the screen, I could see the stage. Rows of children sat in neat chairs. Teachers smiled proudly. Parents lifted their phones, ready to record. Then I spotted her. Lily. She was sitting in the second row, her feet not quite touching the floor, hands folded neatly in her lap. She was wearing the blue dress I had bought her last birthday. She had insisted she would only wear it for something very important. My chest tightened. She kept looking toward the front audience seats. Not at the stage. Not at the teachers. She was searching. For me. I instinctively raised my hand toward the screen, like she could somehow see through it. "Look up, sweetheart," I whispered. The principal stepped up to the microphone. "Today we celebrate our most outstanding student." Applause filled the hall. Lily didn't clap. She leaned forward in her chair, scanning the crowd again. Her parents sat in the front row. I recognized my son immediately. New suit, polished watch, arm resting proudly around his wife. They were smiling for photos. They didn't notice her panic. Then the principal said her name. Lily Carter. The audience burst into applause. Lily stood up slowly, but she didn't walk to the stage. Instead, she turned toward the audience again. Her eyes were moving faster now, searching. I felt something heavy settle in my chest. She still believed I would be there. She trusted I would be there. The teacher gently nudged her. "Go on, Lily." She took a few steps toward the stage, then stopped. She leaned toward the microphone before anyone expected it and asked softly, Can I find my grandpa first?" The room went quiet. Even through the hallway speaker, I could hear the silence. The principal smiled awkwardly. "I'm sure he's here somewhere, sweetheart. You can look after the ceremony." Lily shook her head. "No, he promised. He always keeps promises." My fingers tightened around the flowers. My son shifted in his seat. I saw his wife whisper something to him, annoyed. He looked around briefly, but not seriously enough to stand. Not seriously enough to care. Lily's voice trembled. He said he would sit in the front so I could see him. My heart broke right there in the hallway, because the seat she was looking at was empty. And then she did something nobody expected. Instead of going to the stage, Lily stepped down from the platform and walked directly toward the auditorium doors. Toward me. Next in part 3, the moment Lily opens the door and sees where I was standing, will change more than just a ceremony. It will expose a truth my son never wanted anyone to see. Part 3. The auditorium doors slowly opened. For a second, nobody inside noticed. The ceremony music was still playing softly, and parents were still holding up their phones, waiting for Lily to accept her award. But I noticed. I straightened instinctively, wiping my palms on my coat. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I almost dropped the bouquet. And then, Lily stepped through the doorway. Her small shoes tapped softly on the tile floor. She looked around nervously. The hallway suddenly much larger and quieter than the stage she had just left. Her eyes scanned the people standing there, past the teenagers, past the parents. Then she saw me. Her entire face changed. "Grandpa." The word echoed down the hallway like it carried every bit of hope she had been holding on to. Before I could react, she ran, full speed, straight into my arms. The bouquet fell to the floor. I knelt just in time as she wrapped her arms tightly around my neck, hugging me with the kind of strength only a child who truly needs someone can have. "You came," she whispered, almost crying. I held her carefully, my throat tightening. "I told you I would," I said softly. She pulled back slightly and looked at me, then frowned. "Why weren't you inside? I saved you a seat." I couldn't answer immediately, because I didn't want to lie to her, and I didn't want to tell her the truth either. Had to stand out here, I finally said gently. Her eyebrows pulled together. Did they not let you in? Children notice more than adults think. Before I could respond, the auditorium doors opened wider behind her. Teachers were now looking. Parents were whispering. The principal had followed Lily out, clearly confused. And behind them, my son. He walked into the hallway, clearly embarrassed. "Dad," he said sharply under his breath, "what are you doing? You're interrupting the ceremony." I slowly stood up, Lily still holding my hand. "I wasn't interrupting anything," I replied calmly. "I was watching from where they allowed me." He looked at the screen on the wall and then at the flowers on the floor. Realization crossed his face. "Wait, they didn't seat you." Before I could answer, Lily spoke first. "They said family seats were full," she said, her voice small but clear. The hallway fell silent. My son's wife stepped forward, forcing a smile. "Well, the auditorium has rules. It's a formal event. There were important parents there." Important parents. I saw my son glance at her, uncomfortable now. Lily tightened her grip on my hand. "He is important," she said. Her voice shook, but she didn't let go of me. He helped me practice every day. He listened to my reading. He fixed my project when it broke. He promised he would watch me. And he did. No one spoke. The principal looked at me, then at Lily, then at my son and his wife. And something in her expression changed. She turned toward the auditorium. "Hold the ceremony," she told the teacher quietly. Then she looked back at me. "Sir, please come inside." My daughter-in-law quickly objected. "It's already arranged." The seating. The principal interrupted gently but firmly. "We will make space." She then looked directly at Lily. "Some guests," she said softly, "deserve the front row." Lily smiled for the first time since she left the stage. She grabbed my hand and started pulling me toward the doors. "Come on, Grandpa. You're supposed to see me win." As we walked into the auditorium together, every parent turned to look. And for the first time, my son looked ashamed. Next in Part 4, inside the auditorium, Lily does something on stage. Part 4. The moment we walked into the auditorium, the noise faded. Conversations slowed, then stopped. People weren't watching the stage anymore. They were watching us. Lily held my hand tightly as she led me down the aisle. The principal herself walked beside us, and a teacher quickly moved 2 chairs from the front row to make space. Front row. I hadn't sat in a front row since my wife was alive. She always insisted we arrive early so we could see every second. I swallowed hard at the memory. My son and his wife followed behind, but I could feel the tension radiating from them. My daughter-in-law's polite smile had disappeared. My son looked conflicted. Lily helped me sit. "Right here," she said proudly. "Now you won't miss anything." I nodded, unable to trust my voice. The ceremony resumed. Another child received a certificate. Applause followed. Parents clapped, cameras flashed, but Lily didn't sit back down. Instead, she raised her hand. The host looked confused but smiled politely. "Yes, sweetheart." Lily looked at me, then at the microphone. "Can I say something?" The auditorium chuckled softly, but the principal nodded. "Go ahead." Lily walked onto the stage again. I felt my chest tighten. She stood at the microphone, small hands gripping its sides. For a moment she seemed nervous. Then she took a breath. My project was about heroes, she said softly. Parents smiled. Some leaned forward. I was supposed to choose a famous hero, but I didn't. She turned and pointed directly at me. Gasps rippled across the audience. My hero is my grandpa. My heart stopped. She continued. When my mom and dad were busy, he helped me with homework. When I was scared at night, he stayed on the phone until I fell asleep. When I didn't understand math, he learned it again just to teach me. People were no longer smiling politely. They were listening. And today, they told him family seats were full, she said quietly. The room went completely silent. I saw my son lower his head. But he still came, she said, voice trembling. He stood outside just so he wouldn't break his promise to me. She wiped her eyes. My project won because my hero never quits on people he loves. The entire auditorium burst into applause. Not polite applause. Real applause. Some parents stood. A teacher wiped tears. Even the principal looked emotional. Lily ran back and hugged me again, right there in front of everyone. I held her tightly. My son slowly approached. For the first time in years, he looked unsure of himself. "Dad," he said quietly. His voice was no longer proud, no longer defensive, just small. "I didn't know they turned you away." I didn't answer immediately, because I wasn't thinking about the seed anymore. I was thinking about something much deeper. "I wasn't turned away by the school," I finally said softly. His wife stiffened. I looked directly at him. I was turned away by my own family. His eyes filled with guilt. Behind him, whispers spread across the parents, not judgmental, just heavy with understanding. For the first time, my son realized something. Respect isn't demanded. It's earned. And he had just seen who Lily truly respected. Next in part 5. After the ceremony, my son comes to my house that night, and what he admits changes our relationship forever. Part 5. That night, I didn't expect anyone to visit. After the ceremony, Lily hugged me 3 more times before leaving. She made me promise I would come over on the weekend so she could show me where she put the trophy. I drove home slowly, the bouquet now sitting on my passenger seat. She had insisted I keep it. The house felt quiet when I unlocked the door. Too quiet. I placed the flowers in a glass jar and sat in my old chair. The applause, her speech, the looks from the audience, they kept replaying in my mind. But one image stayed longer than the others. My son's face. Not angry. Not proud. Ashamed. I had just begun making tea when I heard a knock at the door. Late knocks are never casual. I opened it. Daniel stood there alone. No suit jacket. No confidence. No rehearsed words. Just my son. "Can I come in?" He asked quietly. I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, looking around the house like he hadn't truly seen it in years. His eyes stopped at his mother's photo on the shelf. "She loved this place," he said softly. "Yes," I replied. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where he once demanded money, and where now he couldn't even meet my eyes. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he finally said it. "I didn't invite you on purpose." The words hung in the air. I already knew, but hearing it still hurt. His voice trembled. Melissa said the ceremony was important for networking. Her boss was there, parents from private schools, investors, people she wanted to impress. I stayed silent. She thought. He swallowed. You didn't fit the image. The sentence was quiet, but it hit harder than anything from the courtroom months ago. And you agreed, I said gently. He nodded, staring at the table. I told myself you wouldn't mind, that you were used to simple things. I looked at my hands, rough, worn, older than I remembered. I never needed the front row, I said softly. I just needed to be wanted. His eyes filled. When Lily walked off that stage, he whispered, I realized she wasn't proud of our status. She was proud of you. He finally looked at me. I've spent years trying to look successful, he said, but she already knew what success looked like. I didn't speak, because he needed to finish. I'm sorry, Dad, he said. Not just for today. For all the times I made you feel less than what you are. The house was silent. Then I reached across the table and poured him tea, the same way I used to when he studied late at night as a teenager. You didn't lose me, I said quietly. You just forgot me for a while. He wiped his eyes. Can you forgive me? I looked at him carefully. Forgiveness doesn't come from words. It comes from understanding. I forgave you before you knocked, I said. His shoulders dropped in relief. But then I added gently, forgiveness is easy. Respect takes time. He nodded immediately. I'll earn it. For the first time in years, I believed him. As he left, he stopped at the door. Dad. Yes. Lily asked if you could come to her house this Sunday. I smiled faintly. I was hoping she would. He smiled back, not the confident smile of a businessman, the small smile of a son again. Next in Part 6, Sunday dinner at Lily's house reveals another truth, and my daughter-in-law finally says what she never thought she would. Part 6. Sunday arrived sooner than I expected. I woke up earlier than usual and stood in front of my closet for almost 10 minutes. It sounds silly at my age, but I wanted to look presentable. Not impressive, just respectful. I chose a clean sweater and pressed my trousers carefully. Before leaving, I paused in front of my wife's photograph. Well, I said softly, let's see how this goes. Daniel's house was larger than I ever felt comfortable in. Tall windows, polished floors, quiet hallways that echoed when you walked. But the moment I rang the doorbell, the door flew open. Grandpa. Lily threw her arms around me so hard I almost lost my balance. You came. I told Mom you would. I laughed gently. I keep my promises, remember. She grabbed my hand and pulled me inside. Come see my trophy. I put it where I can see it when I do homework, because you said remembering hard work matters. She led me to her desk. The award sat right beside a framed picture. It wasn't her parents. It was a photo of the two of us fixing her science project at my kitchen table. My chest tightened. You kept that? I asked. She nodded proudly. You're my helper. I then noticed someone standing quietly in the kitchen doorway. My daughter-in-law, Melissa. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't look guarded or formal. She looked uncomfortable. Dinner's almost ready, she said softly. I nodded politely. We sat at the table together. The meal was quiet at first, not tense, just unfamiliar. Daniel tried small talk. Lily talked about school, but Melissa stayed silent. Halfway through dinner, she finally spoke. "Mr. Carter, I owe you an apology." The room went still. She set down her fork. "I cared too much about appearances," she said. "I thought success meant looking perfect to others." She looked directly at me. But Lily showed me something at that ceremony I couldn't ignore. Her voice trembled slightly. She wasn't proud of what we have. She was proud of who stood beside her. Daniel didn't interrupt. Lily just watched. Melissa continued. "I was wrong to exclude you, and I'm sorry for making you feel unwelcome in your own family." I studied her face carefully. This wasn't politeness. This was sincerity. "Thank you for saying that," I replied gently. She nodded, relieved but emotional. "I hope you'll still be part of her life," she said quietly. I looked at Lily, who was pretending not to listen but clearly listening to every word. "I never stopped being part of it," I said. Lily smiled. After dinner, Daniel walked me outside. The evening air was calm. "I meant what I said," he told me. "I want you around more. Not just for Lily. For me too." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Then we start small," I said. "You come by Wednesday. The sink still leaks." He laughed, genuinely this time. "I remember you teaching me that when I was 10. "You remember wrong," I said. "You mostly held the flashlight backwards." He smiled, but as I walked to my car, Lily ran out again. "Grandpa." I turned. She handed me a folded paper. "What's this?" "A new drawing," she said. "For your fridge." I opened it. 3 stick figures holding hands. Me, her, and Daniel. At the top she had written, "My family." I swallowed hard. Sometimes reconciliation doesn't come from long speeches or courtrooms. Sometimes it comes from a child who simply knows what love looks like. Next in Part 7. A phone call a few days later brings unexpected news, and my son faces a decision that will prove whether he truly changed. Part 7. Wednesday evening, just like he promised, Daniel showed up at my house with a small toolbox in his hands. He looked almost embarrassed standing on my porch. "I brought my own tools," he said. "Figured I should start learning properly." I stepped aside and let him in. The kitchen sink had been leaking for weeks. Normally, I would have fixed it alone, but this time I waited. "All right," I said, handing him a wrench. "First lesson. Always shut the water valve before pretending you know what you're doing." He laughed nervously. "I deserve that." We worked side by side under the sink, bumping elbows, arguing over which pipe was which. At one point he tightened the wrong connection and water sprayed straight onto his shirt. He jumped back. "Okay, that one was my fault." For the first time in years, we both laughed, not politely, not carefully, just naturally. It felt familiar. Later, while we were drying the floor, Daniel's phone rang. He checked the screen and his expression changed. "Melissa," he said quietly. He answered. I couldn't hear her voice, but I could see the shock on his face. "What do you mean?" he asked. "When?" "Tomorrow morning." He ended the call slowly. "What happened?" I asked. He sat at the table, staring at the floor. "Melissa got a job offer," he said. "A big one." That's good news. He nodded, but didn't smile. It's in another city, he said. 3 states away. The words hung heavy between us. And she wants to move, he added. I understood immediately. Lily. School. New house. New life. Far away. You should be happy for her, I said gently. I am, he replied. But Lily. He rubbed his face. She cried when she heard. First thing she said was, "What about Grandpa?" My chest tightened. He looked up at me. She asked if you could come with us. I stayed quiet. At my age, you don't just pack a life into boxes. My house held memories. My wife's garden, the porch swing, the hallway marks measuring Daniel's height as he grew up. I can't leave this place, I said softly. I know, he replied quickly. I told her that. He leaned forward. But then she said something else. What? He swallowed. She asked if we could stay instead. I looked at him, surprised. That's not a small decision. No, he said. It's not. He stared at his hands. For the first time, I realized I was choosing between a career opportunity and the people who actually make life matter. The kitchen was silent, except for the slow drip of water whey. Hadn't fully tightened yet. I spent years chasing status, he said. But Lily only wants one thing. What's that? He looked at me. Family close enough to hug. He exhaled. I don't know what the right decision is yet, but I know I won't make it alone this time. I placed a towel on the table. You already changed, I said. Before, you would have decided without even telling me. He nodded slowly. I'm trying to learn what matters. As he left that night, he paused at the door. Dad, if we stayed, would you really want us nearby? I smiled faintly. I never wanted distance between us, I said. Only respect. He nodded, but neither of us knew yet that the decision he would make the next morning would surprise everyone, especially me. Next in Part 8, Daniel makes his choice about the job and the reason he gives shocks his wife, his co-workers, and me. Part 8. The next afternoon, Daniel showed up at my house again, but this time he didn't knock. He opened the door slowly and stepped inside. I was in the living room fixing the old clock your grandmother loved. I looked up immediately. You look like you haven't slept, I said. He hadn't. His tie was loose, his eyes tired, but something else was different too. He looked calm. Well, I asked gently, you made your decision. He nodded and sat down across from me. I went to the office this morning, he said. They had the contract ready. Promotion, higher salary, new house allowance, everything I ever chased. I waited. My boss said I had 1 hour to sign. And he looked at the floor, then back at me. I asked him one question. What question? I asked him what I would have more of, time or money. I smiled faintly. And what did he say? He laughed, Daniel said. He said, you'll have plenty of money, but no time at all. The room was quiet. I pictured Lily eating dinner without me, he continued softly. School events I wouldn't attend. Phone calls instead of hugs. He paused. Then I pictured you sitting here alone again. My hands rested on the clock tools. So, I said, what did you do? He exhaled. I declined the job. I blinked. You turned it down. He nodded. My boss thought I was crazy. Said people wait years for opportunities like that. I leaned back in my chair. And Melissa? He smiled a little. She was shocked at first, but then Lily hugged me so hard she almost knocked me over, and Melissa started crying. I felt my throat tighten. What did Lily say? He laughed softly. She said, "Now Grandpa won't miss my next award." I looked down for a moment, collecting myself. Are you sure? I asked carefully. That's a big sacrifice. He shook his head. No, he said gently. The sacrifice would have been losing what actually matters. He leaned forward. For years I thought success meant a bigger house, a better car, people being impressed. He looked around my small living room, the worn couch, the ticking clock, the sunlight through the curtains. But this house, this family, this peace, I almost traded it for strangers' approval. I nodded slowly. You finally learned something I took decades to understand, I said. What's that? People don't remember how much you earned, I replied. They remember whether you were there. He smiled quietly. Then I want to be there. A few days later, Lily came over after school. She ran inside and hugged me. Grandpa, Dad told me. We are staying. I laughed. That seems to make you happy. It does, she said proudly. Now you can come to my reading day, and my science fair, and my music recital. She paused. And you won't have to stand outside again. I looked at Daniel. He met my eyes and said quietly, Never again. And for the first time, I believed him completely. Next in Part 9, a letter arrives in the mail addressed to Lily. But what she asks me to do after reading it leaves me speechless. Part 9. A week later, I found the letter in my mailbox. It was small, cream-colored, and addressed in careful handwriting. To Lily Carter. I smiled and set it on the kitchen table, knowing she would be over after school. Right on time, the door burst open. Grandpa. She ran in, dropped her backpack, and immediately spotted the envelope. Is that for me? It looks important, I said, handing it to her. She opened it carefully, tongue pressed against her lip as she read. Her eyes grew wider with every line. Then she looked up at me. Grandpa, they picked me. Picked you for what? The school asked me to give a speech at the district assembly, she said excitedly. All the schools will be there. I clapped softly. That's wonderful. She smiled, but then her expression changed. Nervous. Grandpa, will you help me write it? Of course, I said. What do you want to talk about? She sat beside me and held the letter tightly. They told me I should talk about success, she said, but I don't want to talk about grades or awards. What do you want to talk about? She looked at me seriously. I want to talk about family. My chest tightened. Why? Because everyone clapped when I got my award, she said. But the real reason I won was because you didn't give up on me. I didn't know what to say. She leaned closer. I want to tell them something important. What's that? That sometimes the most important person in your life isn't the one people expect. I smiled gently. That's a very big message. She nodded. And I want you there again, she said softly. But this time, I don't just want you watching. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? She hesitated, then asked the one thing I never expected. Will you stand on the stage with me? I was speechless. Lily, that's your moment. She shook her head. No, she said firmly. It's ours. I looked at Daniel, who had been standing quietly in the doorway listening. His eyes were soft. She's right, he said gently. You were part of every late night she studied, every project she built, every time she wanted to quit. I stared at the little girl beside me, at her hopeful face, at the trust in her eyes. I don't know if I belong on a stage, I admitted. She grabbed my hand. You belonged there the first time too, she said. They just didn't know it yet. I swallowed. All right, I whispered. Her face lit up instantly. Really? Yes, I said. I'll stand with you. She hugged me tightly. For a long time. I had believed I was just an old man living quietly in a small house. But that moment taught me something. Sometimes, your life matters most to the people you least expect. And sometimes, love gives you a second chance to be seen. Next in Part 10, Final. At the assembly, Lily's speech changes more than a room. And my son says something in front of everyone that I waited years to hear. Part 10, Final. The day of the district assembly arrived faster than I expected. I barely slept the night before. I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my tie 3 different times. It had been years since I dressed for anything formal. My hands weren't shaking from age. They were shaking from nerves. I wasn't afraid of people. I was afraid of not deserving the place Lily had given me. Daniel drove us to the school auditorium. This one was much larger than the last. Hundreds of seats. A wide stage, bright lights overhead. Lily held my hand the entire walk inside. Don't worry, she whispered. I'll be right next to you. We sat in the front row again. But this time, no one stopped me. Teachers greeted me politely. Parents smiled. The principal even shook my hand. The ceremony began. Student after student gave speeches about goals, success, and dreams. Then Lily's name was called. She stood up, looked at me, and smiled. Come on, Grandpa. My heart pounded as I followed her to the stage. The lights were brighter than I imagined. I could barely see the audience, just rows of shapes and shadows. But Lily wasn't nervous. She walked to the microphone and held her speech paper carefully. Everyone talks about success, she began. Good grades, big jobs, money. The room grew quiet. I used to think winning my award meant I was successful. She paused, but I learned something different. She turned toward me and gently took my hand. My grandpa never had a big office. He never wore expensive suits, but he showed up every time I needed him. I felt my throat tighten. When I was scared of a test, he practiced with me. When my project broke, he fixed it. When I looked into the crowd, he was there, even when no one saved him a seat. The audience became silent, completely silent. Success, she said softly, isn't how important people think you are. It's who you never stop loving. I heard sniffles in the audience. She smiled at me. My hero isn't famous, but he taught me how to be a good person. Applause began, slow at first, then louder. Then the entire auditorium stood. A standing ovation. I had never experienced anything like it in my life. But then something even more unexpected happened. Daniel walked onto the stage. He wasn't part of the program. He took the spare microphone, his voice unsteady. "I need to say something," he said. The room quieted again. He looked directly at me. "I spent years thinking success meant being impressive to strangers," he said. "I was wrong." He swallowed. "The man standing here raised me, sacrificed for me, and I repaid him by pushing him aside when I thought he didn't fit my image." The audience listened carefully. "I was ashamed of his simplicity," he continued softly, "but today I'm proud to call him my father." My eyes blurred. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, in front of everyone. "Not privately. Not later. Here, because respect shouldn't be hidden." I couldn't speak, so I hugged him. Right there on the stage. Lily wrapped her arms around both of us. 3 generations standing together. The applause returned, louder than before. That night, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. For years, I believed life quietly fades when you grow old. But I was wrong. Sometimes life gives you something unexpected. Not money, not status, but something far greater. A family that remembers you, and a seat that no one can ever take away again. The end.